Hold up, if you wanna go and take a ride with me, better hit me, baby, one more time.
More variety than you can imagine. Relax Radio.
Welcome back to Relax Radio with me, Nick, giving you guys company all the way until 6 p.m. That's right. We're talking about all things that is going on right now in the UK. There's a lot of things happening, with Matt Hancock resigning from his job and the issues of the COVID situation in the country. Yeah, there's a lot of spice and a whole not so nice. And if you're wondering who this is, well, my name is Nick, and I'm keeping you guys company all the way until 6 p.m. right here on Real Talk. So make sure you guys hit me up on those numbers 07852473473. That's right, those are the magical numbers. And also don't forget, you can download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Carry us all day, every day. And like I said, there's a lot of these things going on right now. And looking at the situation, well, the easing measures on July the 19th are very, very likely. So this is something that is happening, and this is what Boris Johnson has actually confirmed. And he's saying, okay, it looks like we can get back to normal, to our normalcy, is what he's trying to say. And he has been suggesting that the country gets back to normal as soon as practical. And with the rising cases in the Delta variant right now, he had to delay the recent lifting of the restrictions, but now he's make sure that we're on the go, and this is something that is going to happen at July. So let's see how it goes. And the people in England are very likely to return to pretty much life before COVID on the 19th of July. I mean, that's a stretch if you ask me. A stretch, when you say your life before COVID. Well, pre-pandemic, like I said, life was way more different than it is right now. With the pandemic happening across the country, well, it's not going to be likely that we can return back to the pre-pandemic times. So I don't really see what Prime Minister Boris Johnson is getting on in this particular topic. He has been talking about all these things. So all we can do is, notice hopefully in the future that he may come up with a sensible plan. And he didn't go on to say that it is sensible that we stick to our plan, but a cautious but irreversible approach to lifting the lockdown right now is remaining, to lifting all of this remaining restrictions. What he's essentially trying to say is trying to put it out there that, it is, it's a smart idea what we did. We had to lift the lockdown a month later than we were supposed to originally, but it comes with its rewards. So the final stages of easing the lockdown measures was previously put back by 4 weeks. That was from the 21st of June. So that is what a lot of people have been officially calling it Freedom Day. It was originally supposed to be 21st of June, but then, thinking about it, isn't the 19th of July more fitting to be called Freedom Day? Because, we are actually coming back out of it. So I don't know. That's just me adding my 2 cents in right there. So the new Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, will update MPs later on the restrictions. And the planned easing on the 21st of June was delayed amid concerns over the spread of the Delta variant. So when announcing the delay, the Prime Minister promised a review after 2 weeks. And yeah, he did discuss about a review. He did mention, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to approach this, and we're going to make sure that we come forward with a review, and we're going to review our system and how we're going to tackle this particular issue and particular matter at hand. And looking also at the other things aside, travelers from the UK to mainland Portugal will now be required to quarantine for 14 days on arrival. So a lot of these people coming in from Portugal, UK, a lot of our UK residents coming in will now be asked to isolate for 14 days on arrival unless they've been fully vaccinated for at least 2 weeks. So the people who do come into the country and who have had already their vaccinations, well, it better be between 2 weeks. It's all at least a minimum time frame of 2 weeks before, after their vaccine. Well, Portugal, which was initially removed from the UK's green list, a travel list of quarantine-free destinations earlier this month, has brought in the new legislation until at least the 11th of July. So it does not apply to the Portuguese island of Madeira, which is also being added to the UK's green list on Wednesday, or the Azores, which is staying on the amber list. So right now they're saying this is what's going to happen. Well, a lot of people who from the UK who are traveling to Portugal will be required to isolate for at least 14 days on arrival. So the Portuguese government has finally decided, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Right now, this is the risk because there's a number of cases. It has been increasing. So what we're going to do is we're going to tackle it like this. This is the best approach that we can do. And looking at all these things, also the Hong Kong government has announced new measures banning all passenger flights from the UK from the 1st of July after adding the country to its extremely high risk group. I mean, that is for me, that is a little bit intriguing, because looking at the situation for China, for Hong Kong rather, to say that okay, the UK has a lot of high risk group, it's ironic, because you can see how the UK tackled the situation, and they put a lot of these other countries that were not supposed to be in the lockdown, they put them in these red zones. So right now Hong Kong has put the UK in its extremely high risk group. That's what they're calling it. So, speaking on Monday, Mr. Johnson also went on to say, although there are some encouraging signs and the number of deaths remain low and the number of hospitalizations remain low, well, though both are going up a bit, we are seeing an increase in cases. So right now he is admitting to it. And he is saying, okay, listen, we are seeing some sort of increase in cases. So he further went on to say, so we think it's sensible to stick to our plan to have a cautious but irreversible approach and use the next 3 weeks or so to complete as much as we can of that vaccine rollout. So, and then with every day that goes by, it's clearer to me and all our scientific advisors that we are very likely to be in a position on the 19th of July to say that really is the terminus. So that is the end date. This is what he's talking about. He's making sure that the 19th of July. If you don't hear me now, well, you better hear loud and clear. Right now, I'm telling you, the Prime Minister has officially said that the 19th of July will be the terminus. And we can go back to life as it was before COVID as far as possible. So I mean that statement also just raises the question: how far do you mean? How far? As far as possible? Are you trying to tell us, okay, what, we don't have to follow social distancing, but will we still be required to wear masks, or to make sure that we sanitize our hands regularly, or what is it that he means when he says as close as possible? I'm just really intrigued right now. And Mr. Javid's address, which will come less than 48 hours after taking the role from Matt Hancock's resignation. Oh, we're going to be talking about that as well, is expected in the House of Commons at about 5:30 BST. So Mr. Javed said, I want to see the restrictions lifted and life going back to normal as quickly as possible. And that is my absolute priority. I want to see those restrictions lifted as soon as we can. And he said, it's going to be irreversible. There's no going back. And that's why we want to be careful during that process. And he was appointed on Saturday evening, shortly after Mr. Hancock resigned for breaching social distancing guidance. And there's been a lot of pressure, on Matt Hancock with that recent regard. We'll definitely be talking about that and looking at all of these things. And going on further, there's also lots of talks about encouraging data. But with the infection levels climbing rapidly, how can that actually be? How can this data actually be encouraging? I mean, get to the point and try to make it clear. Like, the government says all these data are getting encouraging, but how can that actually be if there's still a level of climbing of the infection? So how? Make it clear for us. Well, the key is actually in the picture emerging with hospital cases and deaths. So when initial delay to step 4 was announced, infection rates had just started rising, and government scientists were worried what could lead to with the vaccination program not fully rolled out. So the past few weeks, well, they provided clarity about what we can expect. And the answers can be found by comparing the start of the second wave in the autumn with what is happening right now. So during September and October, cases were rising as much as they are right now. But right now, they've come down lower than usual. And these are just, expected numbers right here. And looking at all these things, looking at the trend back in August, well, the cases, the daily confirmed cases by date reported. So looking at all these things, there's 20,000 cases back in August. That was the peak. They peaked in August, around mid-October, around mid-October. So somewhere between mid-October to end of October was when the peak of the number of cases. Right now, it's at a low, and it is steadily climbing is the problem. But there's fewer people being admitted to the hospitals in comparison. There's more number of cases. Yes, that's true. That's right. But there has been a number of hospitalizations. So with that regards, looking at it from that angle, there has been less and less number of people. So within 8 weeks, that has translated to more than 1,000 hospital admissions a day. So this time around, there's just only above 200 hospitalizations. So just looking at the figures right there, I'm telling you, 10 times better than it was around October, around autumn 2020. So there is even better news with the deaths as well. So the latest estimates show fewer than 1 in 1,000 infections is leading to a death. At the peak of winter wave, it was 1 in 60. So 1 in 1,000 people. There will like looking at the probabilities right there. 1 in 1,000, there's a chance of someone dying. 1 in 1,000. Back in winter, it was even worse because it was 1 in 60 people. So looking at the figures and the numbers, it says that although the cases are rising, it is pretty encouraging to see that, the data is, it does give some sort of hope. So this all can, has a dramatically altered, what can be considered a proportionate response to the virus, and why a further loosening of restrictions remains on the cards. So right now, we don't really know 100% sure whether this will backfire or not. So Boris Johnson, although he's saying all of these things, we have to consider the facts right here. The number of cases has actually come to the point where there's a steady rise of cases, but hospitalization and number of deaths has actually reduced significantly, looking at all these figures. And the number of new coronavirus cases across the UK has continued to rise. And, quickly in the last week, that would have been the Freedom Day, are now up to 59% in week-on-week figures. So in Scotland, there have been a record number of daily cases recorded, with a further 3,285 cases reported on Monday, surpassing the previous high of the 2,999 from Thursday. So the latest figures show that across the UK, 44 million people, or at least 84.1% of all the adults, have had their first jab, and more than 32 million, that is 61.6% of the adult population, have had their second jab. So they've had their second doses. So there's a big population that has had their second dose. So looking at all these figures in consideration, I'm telling you right now, it is the way it is going. It looks like the numbers are encouraging. So let's see how it goes as we go along with the measures. Hopefully by the time July comes, we have just a couple of more days until July comes. And then once July comes rolling in, we will see the exact figures, and they will come to a steady decision about whether there will be the 19th of July will actually be the terminus date. And when I say terminus, I mean the irreversible approach to lifting all restrictions in the UK and getting back to the pre-COVID situation where, you wouldn't even be required to wear masks, or you don't have to sanitize your hands, which in my personal opinion, I think it's a great upgrade. People need to sanitize their hands regularly as much as possible. That's just my 2 cents on it. And Matthew Taylor, the chief executive of the NHS Confederation, which represents health services in England, urged Mr. Javid to be a voice of concern in the cabinet over the pressure the pandemic is heaping on the NHS. So looking at all these things, they are talking about these particular things, and they're saying right now we are in a good position. If the lockdown is going to be lifting, well, we are in a good position to do so, is what they are saying. So let's see how it goes. Hopefully this is something that they can figure out. And also looking at things, in Wales, the lifting of the coronavirus restrictions has been paused to be reviewed again on 15th of July, while in Scotland, it is hoped that the remaining rules will be lifted on the 9th of August. So some rules in Northern Ireland also will be reviewed on the 1st of July. So on the 1st of July is essentially when a lot of the countries in the UK will decide, when they're going to review the lockdown restrictions and, how they're going to lift it, or if they're going to ease into it at all. So make sure you guys tune in for more on that. We'll be keeping you up to date and live with all the things that is going on in the UK. All you got to do is simple. Hit me up on those numbers, 07852473473. That's right. And with that, we're going to be taking a real quick break, taking a look at your time right now. It is 3:25. A good afternoon.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, how much has changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Or you didn't do very well. And they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he might say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter. Yeah.
You know, he'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it," and that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. I mean, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you know, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. You know, when it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. You know how much. A lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, you know, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. You know, for the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
One of the easiest ways to increase your net worth is to ensure that you have higher cash flows. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to not buy things on hire purchase, not buy things over months and months because you can't afford them now, but you want it. It's kind of that delayed gratification. Rather than buy that couch, that car, that stereo, that computer, whatever item, and pay it off over 12, 24, 36 months at an interest rate, rather invest that money, make do with what you've got, and then after 12, 24, 36 months, take the money that you've now invested and buy that good. An asset could be anything that appreciates or reduces a tax bill. So it could still be a liability, but it reduces their tax bill. And I'm not going to go into the technicalities because that's out of our remit here. However, for our use or our purpose, what we are talking for the listeners here is I would put this definition of an asset forward. An asset is anything that increases your income. Anything.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, you know, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, you know, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods. They're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, you know, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, you know, in the UK.
conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods. They're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good things.
Welcome back to Relax Radio, RELAKS, with me, Nick. That's right. We're talking about all things that is going on in the UK, and there's a lot of actual discussion and talk going on, and the ministers have actually been urging the public to eat less meat. That's something interesting. In case you guys are wondering what this is, well, my name is Nick, keeping you company all the way until 6 p.m. That's right. And if you want to be part of the show, well, it's pretty simple. The numbers are 07852-473-473. That's right. Those are the magical numbers right there. And also, you can always check us out on our social media platforms. That's right. We are on pretty much big on Facebook, we're on Instagram as well, and we are pretty much big on YouTube. So all you got to do is simply like, follow, subscribe, and share. That's all you got to do to be a part of the fun all day, every day. And looking at all things that is going on in the UK, and getting back to it, the ministers have actually been talking and urging the public to eat less meat. Well, that rhymed, yes, but hey, thinking about all this, I mean, it's interesting that the government suddenly realized that they care about our, when it comes to our health and what we eat. Well, the UK public should be urged, actually, by the government to protect the climate by eating less meat and dairy products. This is what advisors are talking about. And if you want to make a first step, if you want to move to the first step, well, the first thing you could do is eat less meat. This is what the advisors are saying. And cattle are a major source of plant heating gases, but ministers fear a backlash if they ask people to cut down on steak. I mean, Come on, let's be honest for 1 second, quick second, microsecond right here, thinking about it. The people will definitely be angry about it. I mean, how can you ask someone not to eat something unless, of course, we eat it in proportion? You can't tell someone to completely cut off meat. That's something, I mean, me as a person who loves eating my fair share of, burgers, steak, beef, whatever, whatever it may be. Well, it's very difficult for the government to do that because there will be a big backlash from the public. And the Climate Change Committee, or the CCC, says people should reduce meat eating for their health as well as for the planet. They're saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to benefit. The country will benefit from it. The world will benefit from it. And they will benefit from it as well. The people will benefit from it as well. It's going to be good for your health, and it's going to be good for the planet, is what they're arguing about. And they're trying to, they're trying to assert the people and tell them, okay, listen, this is the reason why we're asking you to do these particular things. So it says that the issues of one of the main failings of a government, which is delivering only a fifth of its pledges on climate change. So people should be asked to eat 20% less meat and dairy products by 2030, and a fifth of its pledge on this, and by 31st, they're saying, okay, by 2030, well, 20% people, 20% less meat should be consumed in the United Kingdom. And by the time 35% less should be by 2050. This is what the CCC has been insisting on. And they're saying, okay, this is how we want to do it. Well, the CCC says Boris Johnson must devise and must come up with a way and implement that particular way based on, evidence-based policies to encourage healthier diets and set clear targets. So it says, a report say the Prime Minister's remarkable climate leadership is undermined by the inadequate policies and poor implementation in many areas of policy. And a government spokesperson said its net zero strategy due in the autumn would show where carbon cuts would be imposed across the economy. So net zero refers essentially to the reducing emissions of greenhouse gases as much as possible, and then balancing out any remaining releases by absorbing an equivalent amount from the atmosphere. So, for example, this is what the plants do. I mean, when you look at it, plants, essentially what they do is they release a lot of oxygen. At the same time, at night, they take in oxygen as well, and they release carbon dioxide. So this is what they're trying to say. It remains, equivalent to in the atmosphere. But the committee complains. The committee has been complaining about this, which is the CCC. Well, the Climate Change Committee has been complaining about this particular matter, and they're saying, okay, right now that the public hasn't been engaged to make changes essential for protecting the climate. So in addition to meat and dairy, they are heating. Well, sales of new gas boilers should be stopped by 2033. People will mostly convert, to pump heats instead, is what they say. So this will involve disruption, and the CCC says ministers will have to subsidize the installation costs as well. And these are just, one of the things that they want to do. And they're saying the other one is power bills. Well, the committee members want to see tax taken off clean electricity and maybe shifted on to more polluting gas. So although power bills for poor households should not rise. So this is one of the things they're saying, okay, when it comes to the power bills and paying the bills, well, we have to tax more of the pollution on gases in comparison to electricity. If it's pure electricity, if it's coming out of green electricity, well, we don't need to tax this. But then if it's coming out of these coal gases or any of that sort, well, we will have to make sure that we maybe increase the taxes on that, but not increase the power bill for people who are in struggling households. So looking at all of this, also flying has also been included in the list. Well, flying, so frequent flyers, people who fly frequently, will need to be curbed, and the CCC believes this needs to be taking place. We need to take action with this regard. We need to make sure that this is implemented as soon as possible. So even if low carbon planes are developed, the UK cannot let demand for aviation grow unconstrained. So they're saying, okay, even if this develops and this happens, so and so happens, well, we should be able to be in that capacity where we can reduce the amount of people traveling in and out of the country. And looking at that also, joining in, well, people will need to be consulted over changes ahead. So they have to be known. These changes will have to be known ahead of time, not in all of a sudden overnight thing or just in a month's time. They have to be prepared for this at least a year's time, perhaps by groups such as the UK Climate Assembly. So people will need to be aware of this particular matter about what they're going to do. What are the strategies the government are planning to impose? And the government says the government says they currently lack policies on these issues and many other issues as well. So waste and low carbon heat networks are said to need policies too. So the committee chairman, Lord Dibin, said the Prime Minister's commitments on the international stage to cut emissions 78% by 2035 are remarkable decisions. And he added that the object of achieving net zero emissions by 2050 sets a major example to other nations. So the trouble, he said, is that the delivery has not been there. And almost all things that should have happened have either been delayed or not hit the mark. Well, all these things that should have happened and should have not been delayed, well, they failed to hit the mark, and they need to step up very quickly. They need to do it now, as soon as possible. And the CCC says that the CCC's chief executive, Chris Stark, funny name. It kind of reminds me of Iron Man for some reason, but yes, Chris Stark went on to say that he was very concerned by the gulf between promises and actions. And his report laid some fundamental principles for the journey towards a net zero carbon economy. And it urges, the Treasury to protect the poorest from the cost of climate change policies. And it says the net zero strategy must be underpinned by an approach that distributes the cost, saving and wider benefits of decarbonization fairly. It must encourage action across society while protecting vulnerable people and companies at risk of adverse impacts. So looking at all this, a government spokesperson said any suggestion we have to slow down delivery climate change action is widely off the mark. So over the past 3 decades, we have driven down emissions by 44%, the fastest reduction of any G7 country. Well, looking at that regards, yes, when it comes to the other G7 countries, we have been taking the initiative and we have been taking the reins and making sure that we impose all this as soon as practical. So let's see how it goes. Hopefully there's something more with that regards. The government can do more about this. And, they're talking about this. We will be talking about more on climate change right after this quick break. And taking a look at your time right now, it is 3:44. Good afternoon.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" Hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. Got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts, mainly one because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on here, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" Hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. You look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? But when you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good thing.
Wanna go and take a ride with me, Betty? Hit me, baby, one more time.
More variety than you can imagine. Relax Radio.
This is Relax Radio, RELAKS. That's right. Where we're trying to keep it, we're trying to keep it easy. And we're trying to keep it real all day, every day, right here on Real Talk, all the way until 6 p.m. That's right. We're talking about all things that is going on in the UK. There's a lot of things happening. And in case you guys haven't noticed, there has been talks and the government has been talking about getting people to reduce their meat consumptions, because this is what they say will help in the long run, will help in climate change. I mean, I beg to differ, and if you do too, well, hit me up and let me know. The numbers 07852473473. Those are the magical numbers. You can always hit me up and let me know what you guys think. And also, don't forget, you can download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to carry us all day, every day. And diving right back to it, the current matter at hand, like I said, the government has been talking about this, and they have been urging the public, the general public, about reducing their meat consumptions. And they say, that right now there has been a lack in policies with comparison to all these things. And they're saying, okay, right now, well, we have been lacking in this particular regard, and waste and low carbon heat networks are said to need policies that need to be changed as well. So the committee chair, Lord Debane, said the Prime Minister's commitments on international stage to cut emissions to 78% by 25 are remarkable decisions. And he says, okay, these are things that they want to enact. These are things that they need to do and they will do. But, it does cause a little bit of a surprise, because, I mean, those are very high ambitions. That's a very high bar that the Prime Minister has set. And looking at all these things also, he added, the committee chairman went on to say that the object of achieving net zero emissions by 2050 sets a major example to other nations. So other nations also will be awestruck, I'd like to say, is the correct word here, because what they want to do is the UK is trying and aiming for big goals, and that goal is to make sure that we hit net zero by 2050, hopefully. So 2050 is the year that they're planning to do. Let's see how it goes. And the committee chairman went on to say that the trouble, he said, is that the delivery has not been there. Almost all things that should have happened have either been delayed or not hit the mark. And they say they need to step up very rapidly. They need to up their game. They need to make sure that they keep up with the promise, because they did say all these things, but where is the substance? There's a lot of talk, but not enough substance is what they're saying. And the CCC's chief executive, Chris Stark, said he was very concerned by the gulf between promises and action, and he's reported report laid down some fundamental principles for the journey towards a net zero carbon economy. And he's, he in that basically in that principle that in that report that he laid down, well, it was talking about how the Treasury needs to protect the poorest from the cost of these climate change policies. And they say, okay, we need to look out for the little person, the small man right there, and those people need our help and support as much as possible. And looking at all these things, also he went on to say that the net zero strategy must be underpinned by an approach that distributes the cost, savings, and wider benefits of decarbonization fairly. And it must encourage action across society while protecting vulnerable people and companies' risk of adverse effects. So these are things that they want to avoid. And looking at the temperature rise, the rise, it has been rising since the 1850s. And looking at the scale, the way it has increased from below zero to almost 1.2 degrees Celsius. That's how much it has increased. So this is looking at the records and looking at all the statistics. 1850 rather was the pre-industrial time, and now that we've hit the industrial time and technological times and all this, at the current rate that we are going in, we might hit 1.2 degrees Celsius by the time we come to 2025. So the government spokesperson said any suggestion we have been too slow to deliver climate change action is widely off the mark. So over the past 3 decades, we have driven down emissions by 44%, the fastest reduction of any G7 countries. And we've set some of the most ambitious targets in the world for the future as well. So in recent months, we've made clear with record investment in wind power, a new UK emission trading scheme, £5.2 billion investment in flood and sea defenses, clear plans to decarbonize heavy industry and North Sea oil, and business pledges to becoming net zero by 2050 or earlier. So our strategies this year will be set out more of the very policies that the Climate Change Committee is calling for as we redouble our efforts to end the UK's contribution to climate change. So what is the environmental group's Friends of the Earth? Well, they have been saying that this environmental group, essentially, they've been talking and they're saying that the committee's criticisms are on the spot. They're locked on and head on, and this is the thing that we need to address. So without a detailed strategy for combating the climate crisis, government promises to decarbonize the economy are simply more hot air. So they're saying, okay, this is just a lot of, there's a lot of talk, but no real substance to it. There is nothing that, that we can grasp on physically to show, okay, these are the results that we've done so far. All we have is thin air, is what they're trying to say. And with no climate action plan and his government support for more roads, runaways, and an overseas gas project, Boris Johnson risked being a laughingstock at the United Nations Climate Summit, is what the environmental group has been saying. Well, the CCC insists that ministers must commit all policies to a net zero test to ensure that the decisions are compatible with the emission targets. But there is, there has been talk about these things, and they've been trying to figure out this initiation and try to initiate all these things. But all these policies, though, are overshadowed by the delayed Treasury net zero review, which will determine how much money and how much cash is invested into into this whole projected zero carbon economy. So some key policies are being delayed by the Treasury, and the environmentalists fear that Chancellor Rishi Sunak might be jockeying for influence with the skeptic wing of the Conservative Party, by withholding funds needed for the PM Green Revolution. So they're saying, okay, this is what, they're saying that Chancellor Rishi Sunak might actually be doing all of these things, and they're planning to withhold all these fundings, and they might not, and Boris Johnson might not actually succeed when it comes to implementing all of these, when it comes to implementing his Green Revolution. And it is a huge challenge for the Treasury at the moment. Until the review comes, we can't really be sure of how we need to take steps into this. And this will also need to be taken into account. Another recent CCC reporting a warning that the nation, unprepared for the inevitable impact of climate change of the heating on the climate rather, would be the UK. And they're saying, okay, the UK will be will be the one who will be hit the worst and the most when it comes to climate change. And with that regards, also UK warned it is unprepared for climate chaos. And they say that the UK is woefully unprepared to deal with climate change occurring to the climate. This is what government advisors are saying right now. They're not prepared for any of this. They have been trying. They have been doing all the things that they need to. And a report by the Independent Climate Change Committee predicts warming will hit the UK harder than first thought. And they say it turns out of more, it warns, they've been warning of more severe heat waves, especially in the big cities, and more intense rainfall with an increased flood risk across most of the UK. And they say, okay, we're going to have heat, we're going to have flooding, we will have a lot of rain as well. So these are things that will affect the UK. It'll hit us the worst and the most, with this particular regard. So the UK has to make sure that we implement all of these things and we implement these rules that need to be done. I mean, this is just, to avoid catastrophe. Well, these are just the things that we need to consider in the long run. I mean, you guys tell me what you think. If you think that we should, if the government is not doing enough of action, well, hit me up and let me know. 07852 473 473. That's right. And with that being said, we're going to be taking a real quick break, and we will be right back after this. Climb Mount Everest. That is one of that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. I mean, okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
They're talking about mental health. Well, if you went out and got some exercise in the fresh air, that would improve your mental health. It will make you feel better.
That's true. That is true. I wholeheartedly agree. But then for some people, it's how do you find the motivation to, especially when it comes to riding a bicycle, to do it again and again and again and again? It's a cycle that you have to be used to. How do you do it? What makes you wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I'm going to pick my bike up today. I'm going to cycle. What makes you want to do that?
What makes me want to do that?
Yeah. What do you like? What could you give listeners, like people listening in right now? What kind of tip could you give them?
Well, the first tip I would give them, if you haven't tried it before, try it. It can open up new horizons. It will make you fitter. It will definitely make you fitter. Cycling is one of the best forms of aerobic exercise you can do.
It sounds like, if you think about it, it sounds like great fun. Because what essentially you're trying to say is also at the same time, when if you look at it from this perspective, with regards to mental health, especially when you look at it with mental health, this is another way to fight it. I feel like you go outside, you meet more people, you interact with, socially, you will interact with more people, and you're keeping fit, you're making connections, you're breathing in the good and exhaling the bad. I feel like that's a great thing right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got a better way with words than I have, I'll tell you. But you're quite right. What you say there.
I've been doing this for quite some time. Hey, you'll get the hang of it.
I'll be doing it for about 10 minutes now. So, yeah.
That I can never really understand people staying in one room the whole day when you can have the world to see. I am a traveler. I travel. I love traveling. Traveling is just one of the things I do. And on top of my bucket list was, to one time, hopefully when I get there, go to Nepal and climb Mount Everest. That is one of that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. Okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
Base camp, yeah.
At least.
Would you be able to cycle there?
Oh.